Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about something powerful, something rare, something the world desperately needs right now, the final evolution of an empath. An empath is not weak. An empath is not overly emotional. An empath is a deeply aware soul learning how to survive in a noisy world without losing their light. But every empath reaches a moment of transformation, a final form, a stage where pain becomes wisdom, sensitivity becomes strength, and kindness becomes unstoppable power. One of the biggest transformations an empath experiences is learning how to stop absorbing the emotional weight of everyone around them. In the early stages of life, empaths often believe it is their responsibility to heal, comfort, rescue, or emotionally carry the people they care about. They naturally feel the pain, stress, sadness, and anxiety of others so intensely that they begin confusing other people's emotions with their own. This emotional absorption becomes exhausting because they rarely know where their feelings end and someone else's begins. Over time, they become emotionally drained, mentally overwhelmed, and spiritually exhausted without understanding why. Empaths are highly sensitive to emotional energy. They can walk into a room and immediately sense tension, anger, sadness, or negativity without anyone saying a single word. They often notice subtle changes in tone, facial expressions, and body language that most people completely ignore. Because of this heightened awareness, many empaths spend years trying to fix situations, calm conflicts, and make everyone feel emotionally safe. They become the emotional support system for friends, family members, co-workers, and even strangers. While this ability comes from compassion, it can slowly turn into emotional self-destruction when boundaries do not exist. Many empaths grow up believing that saying no is selfish. They fear disappointing others or being misunderstood. As a result, they constantly overextend themselves emotionally. They listen to everyone's problems, tolerate toxic behavior, and remain available even when they are completely exhausted. They absorb negativity like a sponge, then carry that emotional heaviness long after the interaction ends. Some empaths even feel guilty for protecting their own peace because they are so conditioned to prioritize everyone else's feelings above their own mental health. The final evolution of an empath begins the moment they realize that compassion does not require self-sacrifice. They understand that caring for people should never come at the cost of destroying themselves emotionally. This realization changes everything. Instead of automatically taking on everyone's pain, they begin observing emotions without internalizing them. They learn how to support others while remaining emotionally grounded within themselves. This creates a powerful shift because they stop operating from emotional survival and begin operating from emotional wisdom. An evolved empath becomes more selective about the energy they allow into their life. They start recognizing toxic patterns, manipulative behavior, and emotionally draining relationships much faster than before. They no longer feel obligated to save people who refuse to heal themselves. They understand that some individuals only seek comfort without ever seeking growth, and constantly carrying those people eventually weakens the empath's own spirit. This awareness teaches them the importance of emotional boundaries. Protecting their peace becomes a priority instead of an afterthought. They begin limiting access to people who constantly create chaos, negativity, or emotional confusion. They learn that distance can be an act of self-respect. They stop feeling responsible for fixing every broken person they encounter. Instead of absorbing emotional storms, they learn how to remain calm in the middle of them. This transformation does not make the empath cold or uncaring. It actually makes their compassion healthier, wiser, and more balanced. They still love deeply and support others sincerely, but they no longer lose themselves in the process. Their energy becomes more stable, their mind becomes clearer, and their emotional strength becomes far more powerful because they finally understand that protecting their inner peace is essential for survival. One of the most powerful stages in an empath's evolution is the mastery of emotional intelligence. In the beginning, empaths often feel emotions so deeply that they become overwhelmed by them. Their sensitivity can make life feel emotionally intense because they do not simply observe feelings, they experience them at a much deeper level than most people. Happiness feels powerful, sadness feels heavy, disappointment cuts deep. An emotional conflict can completely drain their energy. Without emotional control, this sensitivity can make them reactive, anxious, and emotionally exhausted. Many empaths spend years struggling to understand why they feel everything so intensely. They may react strongly to criticism, become emotionally affected by other people's moods, or carry emotional pain for far too long. Because they naturally absorb emotional energy, they often mistake emotional overload for weakness. In reality, their challenge is not feeling too much, it is learning how to manage what they feel without allowing it to control them. As empaths mature, they begin developing a deeper understanding of emotions, both within themselves and within others. They start recognizing emotional patterns, hidden intentions, and unspoken feelings with incredible accuracy. Their intuition sharpens because emotional intelligence allows them to read energy beyond words. They can sense when someone is lying, hiding pain, manipulating a situation, or silently struggling emotionally. This awareness becomes one of their greatest strengths because they stop relying only on surface-level communication. An evolved empath, BR, H no longer reacts impulsively to every emotional situation. Instead, they pause, observe, and process emotions with clarity. They understand that emotions are signals, not commands. This shift gives them control over their responses. Instead of becoming consumed by anger, sadness, or fear, they learn how to respond calmly and intelligently even during emotionally difficult moments. Their emotional awareness becomes balanced with emotional discipline. This emotional mastery also changes the way they interact with other people. They become exceptional listeners because they genuinely understand human emotions. People naturally feel safe around them because evolved empaths create emotional comfort without judgment. They know how to communicate with empathy while still maintaining honesty and strength. Rather than reacting defensively during conflict, they approach situations with patience, understanding, and emotional maturity. One of the most important lessons empaths learn is that emotional intelligence is not about suppressing emotions. It is about understanding them without becoming controlled by them. Many people either avoid emotions completely or become consumed by them. The evolved empath learns the balance between feeling deeply and remaining mentally grounded. They allow themselves to experience emotions fully while still protecting their inner stability. This emotional wisdom makes empaths incredibly powerful in leadership, relationships, and personal growth. They can inspire others, guide people through difficult situations, and bring emotional calm into chaotic environments. Their presence alone often helps others feel understood and valued. Because they understand pain deeply, they also understand healing deeply. Their emotional intelligence allows them to connect with people in ways that feel genuine, rare, and transformative. As this evolution continues, the empath becomes less emotionally reactive and more emotionally aware. They stop wasting energy on unnecessary drama, manipulation, and emotional games. They begin recognizing when people are projecting their insecurities, frustrations, or negativity onto them. Instead of absorbing those emotions, they learn how to separate their own emotional state from the emotions of others. This level of emotional intelligence creates confidence, peace, and self-control. The empath no longer fears emotions because they understand them. They become emotionally strong not because they stopped feeling deeply, but because they finally learned how to navigate emotions with wisdom instead of confusion. Their sensitivity transforms from a burden into one of the greatest strengths they possess. One of the most life-changing transformations an empath experiences is choosing authenticity over approval. In the early stages of life, many empaths spend years trying to make everyone comfortable around them. Because they are highly sensitive to emotions, they naturally avoid conflict, rejection, and disappointment. They often become people pleasers without even realizing it. They adjust their personality, silence their opinions, and suppress their true feelings simply to maintain peace and avoid making others uncomfortable. Empaths deeply value connection, understanding, and emotional harmony. Because of this, they often fear being judged, misunderstood, or abandoned. They become experts at reading what other people want from them and then shaping themselves to fit those expectations. In many situations, they prioritize acceptance over authenticity. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate disrespect to avoid confrontation. They hide parts of themselves because they fear rejection if they fully express who they truly are. Over time, this constant need for approval becomes emotionally exhausting. The empath begins feeling disconnected from their own identity because they have spent so much energy trying to become what everyone else needs them to be. They may appear calm on the outside while internally feeling invisible, unheard, and emotionally drained. Many empaths eventually reach a point where they realize they have spent most of their lives earning love by abandoning themselves. This realization becomes the beginning of a powerful awakening. The evolved empath starts understanding that constantly seeking validation from others creates emotional dependence. They recognize that no amount of approval can replace self-respect. Slowly, they begin reclaiming their voice, their truth, and their individuality. They stop shaping their identity around other people's expectations and begin embracing who they genuinely are. Choosing authenticity is not easy for an empath because it often requires disappointing people who benefited from their silence and sacrifice. Some relationships begin to change when the empath starts setting boundaries and expressing honest feelings. People who once relied on the empath's endless emotional availability may become uncomfortable when access is no longer unlimited. This can feel painful at first, but the evolved empath realizes that losing fake acceptance is necessary for gaining genuine peace. As they grow stronger, empaths stop apologizing for their sensitivity, intuition, and emotional depth. They understand that their kindness is not weakness and their emotions are not flaws. Instead of hiding their true nature, they begin embracing it fully. They become more honest about their needs, values, and boundaries. They no longer pretend to agree with things that violate their spirit simply to avoid conflict. This transformation creates a deep inner confidence. The empath stops chasing validation because they finally understand their worth does not depend on how others perceive them. They become comfortable standing alone if necessary because authenticity becomes more important than temporary approval. They no longer fear being misunderstood because they know that pretending to be someone else is far more painful than being rejected for who they truly are. The evolved empath also becomes more selective about relationships. They no longer surround themselves with people who only value them for what they provide emotionally. Instead, they seek connections built on honesty, mutual respect, emotional safety, and genuine understanding. They begin attracting healthier relationships because authenticity naturally filters out superficial connections. This stage of growth allows the empath to live with far greater emotional freedom. They stop carrying the exhausting burden of constantly performing for acceptance. Their energy becomes lighter because they are no longer hiding their truth. They speak more confidently, express themselves more honestly, and make decisions based on inner alignment rather than external approval. Authenticity becomes the empath's greatest source of strength because it allows them to live without pretending, shrinking, or betraying themselves. Their final evolution begins the moment they realize they were never meant to fit into every space. They were meant to stand fully in their truth without fear of who chooses to stay or walk away. One of the deep BST transformations an empath experience is learning how to turn pain into purpose. Most empaths carry emotional wounds that run far deeper than what people see on the surface. Because they feel emotions intensely, painful experiences often leave lasting marks on their hearts and minds. Betrayal feels devastating, rejection feels personal, and emotional neglect can create years of silent suffering. Many empaths spend a large part of their lives giving love, support, and understanding to others while secretly carrying their own unresolved pain alone. Empaths often attract emotionally wounded people because of their compassionate nature. They naturally want to heal, comfort, and protect others even when those people continuously drain their energy. As a result, many empaths experience toxic relationships, emotional manipulation, betrayal, and disappointment repeatedly before they fully understand their own value. They may forgive too easily, trust too deeply, and remain loyal long after they should walk away. This cycle creates emotional exhaustion and heartbreak that slowly changes the way they see themselves and the world around them. In the early stages of pain, empaths often question why they suffer so deeply while trying so hard to be kind to others. They may feel misunderstood, emotionally isolated, or mentally overwhelmed by the weight of everything they have experienced. Some begin doubting their sensitivity entirely, wishing they could become colder, less emotional or less caring just to avoid further pain. But the empath's greatest transformation begins when they stop seeing their pain as punishment and start seeing it as a source of growth. Every painful experience teaches the empath something valuable about life, relationships, boundaries, and self-worth. Betrayal teaches discernment. Rejection teaches independence. Loneliness teaches self-connection. Emotional suffering forces the empath to look inward and understand themselves on a deeper level. Over time, they begin realizing that pain can either destroy them or awaken them. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of becoming bitter, the evolved empath becomes wiser. They stop allowing painful experiences to harden their heart completely. While they become more cautious and emotionally aware, they refuse to lose their ability to love, care, and empathize. This balance becomes one of their greatest strengths. They learn how to protect themselves without becoming emotionally closed off from the world. As empaths heal, they develop a deep understanding of human suffering. Because they have personally experienced emotional pain, they become incredibly compassionate toward others who are struggling. Their words carry emotional depth because they speak from real experience, not empty advice. People often feel understood around evolved empaths because they can sense the authenticity behind their empathy. The empath's scars become proof that healing is possible. Many empaths eventually discover purpose through their pain. Some become healers, counselors, writers, mentors, artists, teachers, or guides who use their experiences to inspire and support others. Others simply become emotionally safe people whose presence brings comfort and peace into the lives of those around them. Their suffering transforms into wisdom that helps others navigate difficult emotional experiences. The evolved empath also stops identifying solely as a victim of pain. They no longer allow past experiences to define their future. Instead of staying trapped in emotional wounds, they use those lessons to become stronger, more self-aware, and emotionally resilient. Pain no longer controls them because they have learned how to grow through it instead of collapsing beneath it. This transformation creates incredible inner strength. The empath realizes that survival itself is proof of their power. Every heartbreak they endured, every betrayal they survived, and every emotional battle they overcame helped shape a wiser, stronger, and more awakened version of themselves. Their pain becomes fuel for growth rather than a prison of suffering. The final evolution of an empath is not about avoiding pain completely. It is about learning how to transform suffering into wisdom, compassion, strength, and purpose. What once nearly broke them eventually becomes the very thing that helps them rise stronger than ever before. One of the most powerful stages in an empath's evolution is learning the true power of silence. In the earlier stages of life, many empaths feel the need to explain themselves constantly. They try to make others understand their intentions, emotions, and actions because they naturally value honesty and emotional clarity. When conflict arises, empaths often communicate in an attempt to fix misunderstandings, calm tension, or restore peace. They spend enormous amounts of emotional energy trying to be heard by people who were never truly listening. Because empaths are deeply sensitive, criticism and misunderstanding can affect them intensely. They may replay conversations repeatedly in their minds, wondering what they could have said differently to avoid conflict or rejection. Many empaths fear being seen as selfish, cold, or uncaring, so they continuously defend their kindness even when dealing with people determined to misinterpret them. This emotional pattern becomes exhausting because not everyone seeks understanding. Some people seek control, drama, or emotional reactions. Over time, the empath begins noticing a painful truth. Explaining themselves to the wrong people changes nothing. Some individuals are committed to misunderstanding others because it benefits their ego, manipulation, or emotional immaturity. The evolved empath slowly realizes that no amount of honesty can convince someone who has already decided not to understand them. This realization becomes the beginning of emotional freedom. Silence becomes a form of wisdom, rather than weakness. Instead of reacting emotionally to every accusation, disagreement, or negative opinion, the empath learns how to observe quietly without feeling the need to prove themselves. They stop engaging in pointless arguments that drain their spirit and disturb their peace. They understand that constantly defending their character to people who refuse to see their truth only creates more emotional exhaustion. This transformation changes the empath's energy completely. They become calmer, more grounded, and emotionally disciplined. Instead of responding impulsively during emotional situations, they learn the strength of restraint. They recognize that silence often reveals more than words ever could. When the empath stops over-explaining, manipulative people lose access to emotional control because they can no longer provoke the reactions they once depended on. The evolved empath also understands that silence creates clarity. In quiet moments, they can better observe people's intentions, behavior, and emotional patterns. They begin noticing who genuinely respects them and who only values access to their energy. Silence allows them to step back emotionally and see TUATIONs more objectively instead of becoming immediately consumed by feelings. This awareness protects them from emotional manipulation and unnecessary drama. Learning the power of silence does not mean the empath becomes emotionally disconnected or unable to communicate. It means they become intentional with their words. They stop wasting energy trying to convince people of their value, purity, or good intentions. They recognize that mature individuals will understand them without endless explanations, while emotionally unhealthy individuals will continue creating misunderstandings regardless of how clearly they speak. Silence also becomes a form of self-protection. The empath begins understanding that not every thought, emotion, or personal struggle needs to be shared with everyone. They become more private about their healing, goals, and emotional growth. Instead of seeking validation externally, they develop inner confidence quietly. This creates a stronger sense of emotional independence because they no longer rely on constant reassurance or approval from others. One of the greatest strengths silence gives the empath is peace. They stop participating in emotional chaos that once consumed their energy. They no longer feel responsible for correcting every false assumption or fixing every broken relationship. Sometimes walking away silently becomes more powerful than winning an argument. The evolved empath learns that protecting inner peace is far more valuable than proving a point. As this transformation deepens, the empath becomes emotionally unshakable. They stop reacting to negativity with emotional panic or frustration. Instead, they remain calm, observant, and emotionally centered. Their silence carries strength because it comes from self-awareness, wisdom, and emotional maturity rather than fear. The final form of an empath understands that silence is not emptiness. Silence is control. Silence is discernment. Silence is the ability to protect one's energy without needing to explain why. In a world full of noise, emotional chaos, and constant reactions, the empath's silence becomes one of the most powerful forms of inner strength they will ever develop. The final stage of an empath's evolution is becoming unshakably powerful. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is built through years of emotional battles, painful lessons, heartbreak, healing, self-discovery, and personal growth. The evolved empath becomes powerful not because life was easy for them, but because they survived experiences that forced them to become stronger mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Every betrayal taught them awareness. Every disappointment taught them discernment. Every painful chapter shaped a version of them that can no longer be easily broken. In the earlier stages of life, many empaths struggle with emotional imbalance. They give too much, trust too quickly, and love people who do not appreciate their energy. Their kindness is often mistaken for weakness because they naturally try to understand and forgive others. Some people take advantage of this compassion, believing the empath will always tolerate disrespect, emotional manipulation, or one-sided relationships. For a long time, the empath may remain silent, hoping their patience and love will eventually be valued. But repeated emotional pain eventually awakens a deeper level of self-awareness. The evolved empath reaches a point where they finally understand the importance of balancing compassion with self-respect. They no longer believe kindness requires self-destructive. They stop allowing people to access their energy without accountability. This shift changes everything because the empath becomes emotionally stronger while still remaining deeply compassionate. They learn how to care without losing themselves, help without sacrificing their peace, and love without abandoning their boundaries. This balance creates a form of inner strength that is difficult to shake. The empath no longer depends on external validation, constant reassurance, or approval from others to feel worthy. Their confidence becomes internal rather than external. They trust their intuition, honor their emotions, and protect their mental peace fiercely. Because of this, manipulative people lose power over them. Emotional games no longer work because the empath has developed the ability to recognize toxic behavior quickly and distance themselves before becoming emotionally trapped again. An unshakably powerful empath also becomes emotionally resilient. Life may still bring challenges, disappointments, and painful experiences, but they no longer collapse under emotional pressure the way they once did. They have learned how to process pain without allowing it to destroy them. They understand that healing is part of life, and setbacks do not define their worth. This resilience allows them to remain emotionally grounded even during difficult times. One of the most remarkable qualities of the evolved empath is that they remain kind despite everything they have survived. Many people become cold, bitter, or emotionally closed after experiencing repeated pain. The empath, however, chooses growth instead of bitterness. They become wiser and more cautious, but they refuse to lose their humanity. Their strength comes from maintaining their compassion while also developing strong emotional boundaries. This version of the empath radiates a quiet confidence that others naturally feel. They no longer seek attention or approval because they have already found peace within themselves. Their presence becomes calming, powerful, and emotionally safe. People often feel understood around them because evolved empaths carry both emotional depth and emotional stability. They have experienced suffering, survived it, healed from it, and transformed because of it. The evolved empath also understands the importance of protecting their energy. They become intentional about the people they allow into their life, the environments they remain in, and the emotional battles they choose to fight. They no longer waste energy trying to save people who refuse to grow. Instead, they focus on relationships and situations that bring mutual respect, honesty, and emotional balance. This final transformation creates true emotional freedom. The empath stops living in survival mode and begins living with purpose, confidence, and inner peace. Fear no longer controls their decisions. Emotional manipulation no longer weakens them. They trust themselves fully because they have already survived the things they once feared would destroy them. The empath's final form is not someone who stopped feeling deeply. It is someone who learned how to turn sensitivity into strength, pain into wisdom, and compassion into power. They become unshakable because they finally understand their own value, protect their peace without guilt, and walk through life with both an open heart and a strong mind.